To another episode of Sloppy Saturdays, and today we are going over Week 6. Now, a lot of major storylines in Week 6. The biggest storyline, obviously, is that Texas and Penn State are now unranked in the AP poll. Both of those teams have 2 losses now. I want to discuss that in a little bit of a generality in the beginning, and then we'll go over both of those games as well. Now, my biggest thing with Penn State and Texas being unranked, first off, nobody knew this was going to happen. You could say you knew it after the fact. Nobody knew that this was going to happen. Now, we see prime analysts that get paid top dollar. Everybody thought Penn State and Texas was going to be good. Now, I think this is a result of a couple of things. One, I think the major thing is that NIL and transfer portal is making these games a lot closer. Even when I talk to people around me, when you look at Texas against an unranked Florida, when you look at a team that's ranked in the top 10 compared to an unranked opponent, back a couple of years ago, that spread is like a 14-point spread. Now that spread's like a 4-point spread. You just see the gap of talent shorten between these programs so much, and that's because of the NIL and transfer portal. It's not 1, 2, 3 teams have all the talent, and a lot of these teams that are, ranked from like 25 to 35 are still really good football teams with a lot of talent. I think it makes the sport a lot better as a whole. Now, the second thing that I think why these teams are unranked is because it's just too much hype and too much expectation and people getting blown up through the roof. I mean, we know when you talk about somebody in pro sports breaking out, you've seen 3-4 years of their college career. You've seen a couple of seasons, and then you want to make that prediction. That makes a lot of sense. For somebody like an Arch Manning, who, again, I thought was going to be a great quarterback, the sample size that you are going off of for a lot of these schools and teams and players is so tiny in your prediction. So there is way more room for error, I believe, than it is, like I said, in a pro sport. When you've seen a guy play a handful of games at the college level, then you see him play a handful of games on the pro level. Like, when you're looking at a guy that's played 4 games in college football, you're looking at a guy that's played a season in college football. I feel like the sample size is so small and it increases your room of error to get things wrong. Now, again, like I said, I think it's also because of, just missed opportunities, failed opportunities, not season moments that you should have. Like, again, Penn State, Texas, they played games that I believe this weekend they definitely should have won. It did not happen, though. But, yeah, I think, going forward in college football, for people like me who cover college football to the highest level of analysts, people are just going to continue to get things wrong because, like I said, the sample size that you see certain players and certain teams are so small, and you're looking at such, little plays and games to determine things. And the gap is just getting smaller and smaller with the new age of college football. Again, I personally love it. I don't mind being wrong at all, especially in senses like a Penn State, a Clemson, a Texas. These teams that everybody thought was going to make the college football playoffs. These teams that everybody thought was going to be great. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you guys. I have Penn State as my national champion. And I know other well-regarded analysts that had Clemson, Texas as a national champion. It's like, again, if you were going to come out here and say you didn't think any of these teams were going to be good, you're just lying to yourself. That is not the case. That gets into my little rant about that. We're going to get into each game and how they missed their opportunities and how big that's going to be throughout their season. But let's get into our first game that has really nothing to do with that. We are going over Alabama and Vanderbilt. Now, I personally love this game because, again, I'm not a huge Alabama fan by any means. I usually root against them. But Kalen DeBoer was on an extreme hot seat. And this was the point in their season last year after the Georgia game where they played Vanderbilt, where Vanderbilt had possibly the biggest upset of the season. And for me personally, again, I love Johnny Manziel. He is my favorite college football player of all time. He's in support of Diego Pavia, but for some reason for me, I just can't get on Diego Pavia. I think he talks more than any other player in the country, and I was rooting for him, honestly, to go down in this game. Now, definitely a reason why he goes down in this game is because he did not play his best football. You go into Tuscaloosa, you got to play your best football to knock off this Alabama team, especially with a Vanderbilt team where you don't have the depth of roster as in Alabama, you got to come out and be a star. And it was just not his day in this game. When you look at Diego Pavia, 21 for 35, 198 yards, a touchdown, an interception. Again, it's not like this guy was throwing over the field. I think he missed a ton of layup opportunities. He has a big turnover in this game. Again, you have to take over and be the brightest star on the field if you want to knock off Tuscaloosa at home. We saw Florida State do it in the beginning of the year. Again, I think that was a little bit of unpreparedness from Alabama, but at the same time, Thomas Castellanos was flawless in that game. Diego Pavia in this game was not. Cedric Alexander scored the 2 touchdowns for Vanderbilt. One was just on a breakaway run for 65 yards. The other one was on a short catch for a touchdown. But I think this game really leans on Diego Pavia. Diego Pavia had to have his best game of the season, very similar to last year, and maybe they had to get a turnover or two as well like they did last year to beat Alabama. That just did not happen. And for somebody like Diego Pavia, like I said, who continues to talk and talk and talk, I'm very happy Alabama put them in their place because this Vanderbilt team, a lot of people were just getting way too high on the hype train. There are levels to the SEC. This Vanderbilt team is a very good college football team. This was a team coming in 5-0. But to think they were going to be at the cream of the crop of the SEC, that they were going to completely flip the alignment, that was not the case. I'm very happy for Alabama and Kalen DeBoer because Kalen DeBoer was on a tremendous hot seat, and he could not afford missing the college football playoffs twice again. The season is definitely not over yet, and Alabama has to continue to put their foot on the gas. But for this Alabama team, I absolutely love how they played. I think they were very unfortunate to play Florida State, a solid football team, week 1, because I think Ty Simpson didn't have time to get his feet wet. But Ty Simpson looks like a top 5 quarterback in the country right now, and I think he looks great in this game. He threw for 340 yards, threw for 2 touchdowns, did have 1 interception. The biggest takeaway I have from this Alabama game is the production of Jam Miller. Jam Miller looked phenomenal in this game. He has 22 carries for 136 yards and a touchdown. A guy that we were super high on, a guy that we thought could be one of the best running backs in the SEC. We know he's been out for a multitude of weeks. He comes back a couple weeks ago. Now he has 136 yards. Oddly enough, even with the cupcakes Alabama played, they never had a single rusher this year rush for over 100 yards. Jam Miller could definitely build a different element to this game. Like, if he could continue to be a 100-yard rusher for his Alabama offense and balance the run and the pass, take some pressure off Ty Simpson, like, this is going to add a complete different element to the game. Oddly enough, as well as Ty Simpson played, Jam Miller was what I took away from this game because, like I said, they haven't had a rushing offense in the first 5 weeks of this college football season. In week 6, they get it with Jam Miller. And again, Jam Miller was the guy that had super high hopes as in this running back room. He hasn't played. Again, he came back against Georgia, which was a tough matchup. He shines in this one. And then when you look at their receiver room, a lot of people have issues with Ryan Williams when it comes to the drops, when it comes to the blocking. He played really well. Again, this guy is one of the most talented players in the country, whether you love him or hate him. 6 receptions, 98 yards, and a touchdown. Jeremy Bernard, who I really believe could be a number 1 receiver on many teams and is one of the best number 2s you could have. 5 receptions, 82 yards, and a touchdown. I thought he played really well in this game. And then you have Isaiah Horton, who has been stepping up. I didn't know that he would have this much of a workload already. I mean, this is a guy that has 236 yards already as a wide receiver 3 in this offense. Their receiving core looks really good. Their running back room looks really good. I love how their defense came out as well. I think it just took time for Alabama to settle in, as we were seeing with this new age Alabama. I'm happy that they shut out all the noise from last year and they got it done against Vanderbilt. Like I said, I'm extremely happy because I just am not a fan of Diego Pavia. A guy that's like, come on, a 5th-year senior that's talking so much when you are really the underdog in all these matchups. It's time you got put in your place, and Alabama put them in his place. Now for Alabama, though, which I want to discuss, Alabama gets this win that they must need it, and they get the win against Georgia as well in the previous week. But they play a Missouri team, a Tennessee team, South Carolina, LSU, Oklahoma, and Auburn, and they could really only afford 1 more loss in all these matchups. Now, I think they're a better team than Missouri. I think they're a better team than Tennessee, but I think those are extremely tough matchups that you can't overlook. LSU is going to be a dogfight for them. Oklahoma, I do think they're a better team in that matchup as well. But these are all matchups that Alabama has to take advantage of. Again, if a team like Alabama in the SEC that they're going to let in, they do probably have the first dib for a 3-loss team. And based on what we're seeing, like we mentioned, with Texas, with Penn State, with Clemson, there are going to be multiple teams with 3 losses that I think could possibly get into the college football playoffs. But Alabama has a tough schedule. They have to continue to put their foot on the gas because, like I said, they can't really afford any hiccups, especially with second year under Kalen DeBoer when you don't make a 12-team college football playoffs. But I'm very happy how that game turned out because, like I said, I cannot stand Diego Pavia. I mean, you saw it on my channel. I posted the victory formation. He was practicing victory formations. Like, the guy is just being, a complete you-know-what. So I'm very happy he got put in his place. And Alabama shows that there is levels to the SEC. Now let's get into what everybody wants to get into. We are getting into Penn State, UCLA. Now, things are as bad as they could possibly go for James Franklin. Now, I said he lost probably one of the most winnable big games against a big ranked opponent last week. I mean, you're talking about a game that goes into double OT. You're talking about a game in your environment that's arguably the best environment in college football, and a roster where you should have a top roster in the country, not like previous years where you come in as an underdog against these programs. Now, after that, I told you guys I thought Penn State was going to absolutely respond. I thought UCLA was one of the worst Power 4 conference teams, which, again, I still do. But this Penn State loss was so astronomical and is going to go down as one of the worst losses for a ranked team in college football history. And I am not overreacting. It's going to go down as that because there's just so many reasons that make this loss different than any other big upset. When you look at UCLA, they were 0-4 coming into this game. UCLA had nobody come into their stadiums in LA at the Rose Bowl Stadium. Nobody wanted to go to these games. Like, this program was so down coming into this game. Not only that, they had interns at head coach, interns at OC, interns at DC. It took them 2 days to go over a new program with these coaches. So you're not only talking about a team that has been horrible the whole season. You're not only talking about a team that can't get fans to get into their stadium. You're also talking about a complete overhaul in the coaching staff. You're talking about a team that doesn't even match up to yours, that have 2 games to learn the game plan. And they dropped 42 points on you. Now, I know everybody first wants to talk about Drew Allar, obviously, but I'm not really going to talk about Drew Allar and this offense. I think Drew Allar and this offense did their job. They put up nearly 40 points in this game. I don't think that's where the blame should nearly lie in this game. It obviously comes with the defense and the coaching staff. Again, they hire one of the most anticipated defensive coordinators. You let up 42 points to this UCLA team that got blown out in multiple games. When you look, they got blown out by 25 to New Mexico. Could only score 10 points against them. Could only score 10 points against Utah. Like, this offense could only score 14 points against Northwestern, and they put up 42 points against you. This was just their day, it seemed like. But other than that, also the coaching staff, I believe, made pivotal mistakes in this game. When you look at the start of this game, when UCLA drives down, scores right away, I get it. They drive down, they score right away, they make a statement. But after that, they get an onside kick right away and get the ball back again. How are you not expecting your players to be ready for an onside kick? You know, when you're a 24-point underdog in a game, not only are teams going to be more likely to go for it, go for 2, they're going to be more likely to do crazy things, fakes, onside kicks. And the first kickoff of the game for UCLA is an onside kick. You're completely unprepared for it, and UCLA gets the ball back, puts up more points after that. Then I thought at halftime was a complete disgrace. Right before halftime, 2 minutes to go, Penn State is just saving their timeouts. For what? They're not calling a timeout on any play. They let the clock run all the way down, and UCLA gets another field goal. I thought there was a multitude of coaching mistakes in this game. Not only did UCLA play their best game, you're looking at a bunch of missed opportunities from the coaching staff, a bunch of just unprepared. And then also a huge play in the game as well. Even though you may say the game was over, I think it was about like 30 seconds left. UCLA goes back and takes the safety like we've seen people do in this new age era to kill clock. If you go back and look at that play, there is no Penn State rush. Penn State is not even expecting it. My house, who was talking about that they're going to probably go back and go for a safety. The announcer of the game, we're talking about how they're going to go back and take a safety. And Penn State is sitting there letting clock completely drain. It looked like this team has completely gave up. And then after that as well, when you look, you needed a quick out or two, and you just don't even make the throws to do it to set you up for a Hail Mary and just let the game expire. Like, again, I thought Penn State had missed opportunity after missed opportunity combined with you're letting a UCLA team score 42 points against you when we see against much worse opponents, they're scoring 10, 14, can't even crack 20. This was an absolute embarrassment for Penn State, and this is the type of game that could get a coach fired. Now, I'm not going to say James Franklin should get fired. I'm still on the standpoint that he shouldn't. Again, this Penn State team could win out. This is a Penn State team that people had in the top 3, that the rankings had in the top 3. They could win out. Again, they're going to have to win a big game against Ohio State. They're going to have to beat Indiana as well. Is it likely that they win out, knowing how they play in big games? Probably not. But the opportunity is in their hand. If Penn State wants to win a big game, this is the time. I don't think this Penn State team could get in with 3 losses because of how bad this UCLA loss was. Again, we're talking about a coach that didn't even know how to call plays from the headset. There was a multitude of plays that Nico Iamaleava had to call by himself. And I also want to talk about Nico Iamaleava in this game as well. I think this game was super significant for Nico Iamaleava. Another guy that I don't root for because I just think is a guy of example that got too greedy in the NIL era and that people should learn from. But Nico Iamaleava is a guy that could make every single throw on the field, a guy that has prototypical size, can run with the football. If he was going to have a game this season, this was the game to have to put people on notice that he still has the talent to be an NFL quarterback, which I never really faulted on. Again, I didn't think he met expectations last year. I thought he put himself in the grave going to UCLA this year. But this guy has the talent of an NFL quarterback. This guy throws for 166 yards and 2 touchdowns. He rushes for 128 yards and 3 touchdowns. And why I think this is so significant, because this puts people on notice next year if Nico Iamaleava wants to transfer out again, because obviously UCLA is just not going to be the right fit. This is a Power 4 team that is just completely in the ground. I don't think it matters who would quarterback for this UCLA team. They wouldn't have much success. But you saw in this game against a team that's very close to an NFL defense, Nico Iamaleava absolutely took over, and he still has that talent to rise him atop. But I think this is going to be a game people look at towards the end of the season when certain teams are looking for a new quarterback, and Nico Iamaleava could get an even better opportunity. Because we saw him against Northwestern. We saw him against Utah. We saw him against New Mexico. He cannot get anything going. And again, I think it's for a lot of the time UCLA doesn't have the right protection for him. They get dominated in the trenches. He's just not set up for success. But to come out against Penn State, a team that people had in the beginning of the year as a top 3, top 2 team, and just flat out dominate this defense. There is no other words to put it. Flat out dominate this defense with 5 total touchdowns. I think nobody needs this game more than Nico Iamaleava because there was questions on him if he will ever get that next opportunity. And now I think people are going to look at this game towards the end of next season and say, like, this guy has NFL talent. If you put him in the right system, again, he can make our program soar because I don't think he's going to stick with UCLA. And also, he has another, 6 games to prove himself as well. Hopefully him, this offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, interim head coach, they continue to get better and become more competitive as well. I don't want to also make this as, Penn State absolutely lost this game. Penn State was unprepared on the defense side of the ball. The coaching mistakes were crazy. Like, I understand all that, but you also have to give credit when credit is due. When you look at all these interim head coaches coming together on a team that's completely outmatched and winning this game 42-37 as a 24-point underdog, you got to give these guys so much credit for being able to do in 2 days what nobody ever thought they were going to do. One of the biggest upsets we will see in college football history. Credit to that coaching staff, and also credit to Nico Iamaleava and this offense for coming out and setting the tone right away and never letting up. Like, credit to UCLA, one of the biggest upsets we will ever see. And Penn State and James Franklin definitely have some questions. But like I said, for all the Penn State fans that want to see James Franklin go, you got to remember where you were at when James Franklin took over. You got to remember where you were at the last couple of years being a elite team, not being that underdog in the Big Ten to an Ohio State, to a Michigan, being a team that really looked at in the same light as them when you get into these matchups. So James Franklin has turned them around, definitely. Has he had trouble winning the big game? 100%. Is this going to go down as one of the biggest upsets in college football history? We've said that already. But if you want to fire James Franklin, especially in this NIL era where you want to pay players, where it's extremely hard to fire a coach, and what he has done for this Penn State team, you got to make sure, and I don't know how many candidates are out there, you got to make sure you are getting somebody that is an upgrade. And I think these coaches in college football, these top coaches in college football and these top programs, I don't think they fly off trees because we know the top coaches in college football, they stay in the sport for a while. If you're firing James Franklin, if you're eating this money as a program, you got to make sure you're getting somebody better. And I am not 100% sure that somebody better is out there. Yes, are there better coaches in top programs in the country right now? Yes, but they have jobs. I don't know if there's better, necessarily free agent coaches out there. That's all I have to say about that. You knew I was going to rant about Penn State. Now we're going to get into Texas, Florida. This is another game that was absolutely huge. And this is one of the examples why I'm saying a ranked team, especially a team in the top 10 coming into, playing a non-ranked team is only a 4-point line. This shows how spread out college football is. This shows how much the talent gap is not what it used to be. Now, DJ Lagway, I thought played really well in this game, and I thought this Texas defense was going to play a lot better, give him a lot more fits. That was not the case. DJ Lagway definitely needed a bounce-back game. When we saw him against the last top defense he played at LSU, it was absolutely horrible. He threw, 4 or 5 picks. It was insane. This game, he goes 21 for 28, 298 yards, 2 touchdowns. This Florida rushing attack also, I believe, dominated in the trenches. They had 159 yards and a touchdown. They had a well-balanced up pass and run. DJ Lagway did throw an interception this game, but it didn't cost them the game. Then you look at Dallas Wilson. He played phenomenal. He had 111 yards, 2 touchdowns. Now, when you get into Arch Manning and this Texas offense, I had to take a deep breath for this one because everybody knows how much I liked Arch Manning coming into the season. When we look at Arch Manning against Ohio State, he was just a deer in headlights. This Ohio State defense has been completely dominant under Matt Patricia. We're going to get into that in our next game. We played Florida, who their defense has actually been a bright spot for them. We saw them locked down, and LSU offense has a multitude of weapons and a top quarterback. Arch Manning comes in a tough task. Like, this Florida defense has been really good despite them being unranked. But the multitude of sacks and losses he took in this game, the 2 interceptions that were horrible. Like, Arch Manning showed flashes throughout the game. We saw the deep ball that he connected on. Great ball. I have nothing else to say, but this is just an example of us as a community, myself included, just getting way too high on a player, saying that he's going to be this game changer, be this number 1 quarterback in college football, when we realistically saw 4 games of him. And this is what I'm talking about when you were going off such a small sample size, how wrong you could be. Again, do I think Arch Manning has the size of a prototypical quarterback? Do I think he has the deep ball that is a very good deep ball? Do I think he could run, have mobility? Like, I think he has the tools to be a really good college football quarterback. And I think he has the tools to one day be a solid NFL quarterback. I'm not willing to say this guy is a complete bust. But when we look at him this year against Florida, against an Ohio State, he's just unprepared from down to down to play with a level of consistency against these top-ranked defenses. He's just not there yet. And again, it is our fault as a community for sitting here 4 games into Arch Manning and saying this guy's going to take over college football. Now, were there guys that have done that? When you look, like we said, time and time again, with Caleb Williams as a true freshman, Trevor Lawrence as a true freshman, guys with really no sample size in college football that came in and were top quarterbacks. Yes, but that's extremely rare. Us as a community took the Manning name to another level. And I'm getting to the point now where Arch, again, he has to step up. Like, this was a game that I really thought he should have won against an unranked Florida team. The Ohio State game, again, your first game as the true starter of this Texas team. You're playing the number 1 ranked team in the country, or you were the number 1 ranked team in the country. You're playing the number 2 ranked team in the country at their house. Like, that was high expectations. But now, after getting your feet wet in college football, playing an unranked Florida team, we said how good their defense was, but you're making mistakes that just can't happen. The 2 picks were just completely disgusting. He is getting fooled. He is unprepared. I think a huge thing for Arch Manning as well, how bad Texas run game has been. I get it. They have injuries to C.J. Baxter. But, like, when you're rushing for 52 yards in a football game, there is zero chance, pretty much close to zero chance that you were going to win that football game. Rushing for 52 yards, like, it's just not going to happen. Like, it's just not going to be your day. You need a balance, and when you get predictable play calling, it's going to lead to these Arch Manning interceptions. It's going to lead to these sacks. And, again, do I think Arch Manning is nowhere near what we thought he was going to be this year? 100%. But I also think things around this Texas team has been a disappointment. I don't think the play calling has been great. I think the run game, like I said, has been awful. I did not expect this defense to give up 29 points to DJ Lagway as well, with how he has been playing and how well this defense has played throughout the season. All around, this is a bad Texas loss, but when you really have to look at it, it has to start and end with Arch Manning. This was the guy that we gave this tremendous amount of credit to before he really has done anything. And this was the guy that was going to take Texas either to a national championship or have them miss out of the college playoff. It starts and ends with the quarterback, and Arch Manning making these mistakes in these top matchups, in these difficult matchups from game to game is what is going to, take Texas out of the college football playoffs. Like I said, am I in love with the run game? No. Am I in love with the play calling? Not at all. But it starts and ends with the quarterback. And when you have a quarterback getting paid this much, when you have a quarterback with this much hype, it just isn't going to happen. I'm not in the sense of other people where I'm going to say, like, in the beginning of the season, this guy is a top 3 quarterback of the country. And towards the end of the season, I'm going to say this guy is never going to be good. I'm not the guy to quickly jump off of a player, but do I have expectations for Texas for the rest of the season? No, I don't have big expectations for Texas for the rest of the season. They're going to have to win out most likely. And do I have big expectations for Arch for the rest of the season? No. He has to get his feet wet. He has to prove that he could be decisive against these top-ranked opponents, top-ranked defenses, and it just hasn't been there yet. Now, for this Texas team, as we normally do, like we did with Penn State, we're going to have to talk about their possibility of winning out, which I think it's as close to 0 as you could get. And then, are they going to put Texas in with 3 losses? I think it would be extremely tough because of how not uncompetitive. Like, this Florida game was close. Texas, Ohio State, they couldn't get anything going. I don't know. I don't know if with 3 losses, Texas can get in. They play Oklahoma, Red River rivalry next week. Everybody's going to be super excited for that game. One of the best rivalries in college sports. I think they could win that game. I think they're going to be favored in that game because John Mateer shouldn't be back by then. It's a winnable game. They could win it. But when you look at the gauntlet schedule, Kentucky, I expect them to win. Mississippi State, I expect them to win. Vanderbilt, it could be a very tough matchup. They're going to be favored in that for sure. They play at Georgia. Is Arch going to get it done at Georgia? Is anything that we've seen so far going to make me believe that they're going to get it done at Georgia? They play Arkansas, which should be fairly easy for them. Then they play Texas A&M in that rivalry as well. They're at home in that game, but Texas A&M has been phenomenal as well. So you play Georgia, you play Texas A&M, you play Oklahoma. you most likely have to sweep those matchups, and those are very difficult matchups. Whew! College football is crazy right now. College football is insane right now. The expectations we have for Texas, Penn State, Clemson, 3 teams have as little chance you could possibly get in 6 weeks to make the college football playoffs. Everything is flipped upside down. It's such a new age of college football. Now we're going to get into I did want to get into this Ohio State-Minnesota game very briefly. We talked about it last week. We're going to talk about it again. This Ohio State team has been even more impressive than last year. Do I think they have more talent than last year? I'm not going to go as far to say that, with their composite rankings being one of the most insane composite rankings of all time. But they are possibly even more impressive than last year at this point, because they are 5-0. They beat, like we said, Texas, who at the time was the number 1 ranked opponent. They beat Washington pretty handily, who we thought was going to be a close matchup. They haven't let up anything on defense. When we look at this Ohio State team on defense, they haven't let up 10 points the whole entire season. They haven't let up double-digit points the whole entire season. You play a Power 4 team like Minnesota again, not one of the best Power 4 teams. You held them to 3 points for the entire game. This Ohio State team does not let up. And you look, like we said, week from week, the development of Julian Sayin has been absolutely ridiculous. This guy is playing like a Heisman candidate now. We look at him against Minnesota, absolutely flawless. 23 for 27, 326 yards, 3 touchdowns, 97.4 QBR rating. He could not be better against Minnesota. Again, this is what he's supposed to do. But for a first-time starter, Julian Sayin has been phenomenal. His team has 135 yards running the football, which I think is solid. Then when you look on offense, they just have too many weapons. When you look at Ohio State, they have 2 complete number 1 receivers going into another year of college football. And what I said, Cardinal Tate would be a wide receiver 1 for 90% of the teams in college football. And when we look at a Minnesota team that was bracketing Jeremiah Smith in this game, what did Cardinal Tate do? He absolutely went off in this game. 9 receptions, 183 yards, and a touchdown. His long touchdown of 49 yards, the route he ran, he left that defender in absolute dust. The quick, subtle twitch he had in that route, perfect. Jeremiah Smith, we know the player he is, but again, this Ohio State team, when you look at pretty much them and Miami, I would say we're about to get into, compared to everyone else in the country, they are flying through easy mode right now. They are handling their business, whether it's a Power 4 ranked school, whether they're playing a ranked school, like they're winning with ease. Ohio State has the best defense in the country. It is not even close. Letting up, again, 9 points as a high. Are we kidding? Are we kidding? Their defense is flying. Their first-time starter, they are developing flawlessly. The receivers they have, the weapons they have on this offense. This Ohio State team, I mean, right now it's looking like a 1-team race. Again, Ohio State, they have to play Penn State. They have to play a couple of other opponents, but right now they look like nobody could even compete with them right now. Then we're going to get into our last matchup, Miami, Florida State. Miami did exactly what I expected them to do as the number 2 team in the country, to stay at the number 2 team in the country. This Miami defense has been absolutely phenomenal. I think that's the biggest difference from last year. When you look at Damari Brown, when you look at Zachariah Poyser, when you look at Ruben Bain, like Ruben Bain is one of the best players in the country, if not the best. Like their defense on the edges, they have been flying. Their secondary looks really good as well. The biggest difference for me with this Florida State and Miami team, again, this was very similar to Vanderbilt and Alabama for me. This shows in the ACC a difference of power. This shows a solid team in the ACC compared to an elite team, a team that's going to be a national championship contender. And what I thought was the biggest difference as well, not only was Miami's defense flying, I mean, this was a 28, 22-point game where the score did not tell the story. Like, this was not a 28 to 22-point game. Florida State was never close. They backdoored and made it close towards the end. Miami had a sizable lead throughout this entire game. The difference for me, which made Miami to a different level of Florida State, is everybody wants to talk about Thomas Castellanos. I told you guys that my biggest issue with Thomas Castellanos when people were high on this Florida State team is his passing attempts. Like, he was winning these games with 14 passing attempts, 13 passing attempts, 10 passing attempts. I had doubts of Thomas Castellanos stretching the field against elite opponents. When we saw Florida State try to stretch the field multiple times for deep passes, what happened? It resulted in interceptions. I think when you have this style of offense where you have the ability to run the football with your running backs and you have a mobile quarterback, again, it's huge in college football. It's going to get you past a lot of opponents, but it's not going to get you past an elite defense that knows how to cover the edges. When you don't have to play where you have the fear of a quarterback threatening every blade of grass, where Thomas Castellanos couldn't do that in this game, we saw they were eating every time Thomas Castellanos tried to stretch the field. And you are just too predictable for a fast defense that is flying. That was the difference in this game. And then when you look at Miami, Carson Beck is playing like the best quarterback in the country. For me, I know there is debate, obviously him, Dante Moore, others. And I know Carson Beck doesn't get the widely regarded love as other quarterbacks in college football based on what happened last year. I think Carson Beck should be the top Heisman candidate for sure. I think he has been absolutely flawless. I think this offense really falls on Carson Beck's shoulders. I think he's playing way more free than he ever has. And for Carson Beck, he just needed to get out of that Georgia situation. We told you guys that's one thing that we were completely right on this podcast. We told you guys that Carson Beck just had to get out of the situation out of Georgia because he was getting scapegoated. Everybody had high expectations for Georgia. He had stretches where he turned the ball over last year multiple times, but he didn't have the weapons on offense that he has this year at Miami. And he was playing the SEC, led them to an SEC championship, and people looked at that as a complete failure. This is a Miami team, in my opinion, that really hit on everything. When you look at how their defense is flying around, we just mentioned that. But even on offense, everything is panning out to them to the absolute ceiling that they projected it to pan out to. Like Carson Beck, this guy was supposed to be the number one pick in last year's draft. I am still very confident that this guy could be a better NFL quarterback than Cam Moore, than Shedeur Sanders, than the guys he was getting compared to. Again, a guy that could make every throw on the field, a guy that looks completely calm. And not only did Miami get this guy that has a ton of talent, they also got a guy that's been through every situation, that's been through every big game. The moment is not too bright for him. And then when we look at these Miami receivers absolutely shining, they hit on their receivers. Like, they have two guys at the receiver position that are absolute mismatches for almost any defense they play. When you look at Malachi Toney as a freshman, we got to put more respect on Malachi Toney's name because this is a guy that has 375 yards and 3 touchdowns in the 5 weeks in college football. We saw him against Notre Dame come up in a really big spot against Notre Dame, one of the biggest matchups they had in their entire schedule. Then against Florida State, he comes up again with 107 yards, 2 touchdowns. He looks completely explosive. Then you look at TJ Daniels as well, a guy that Mario Cristobal said that he had been wanting for years, a guy that has transferred out multiple times. We saw a guy that played at a big program at LSU, never really had this true opportunity. He looks phenomenal as well. He has 5 receptions for 78 yards and 2 touchdowns in this game. I thought, like I said, this was a game very similar to Alabama and Vanderbilt that was just a separation of two teams in a conference. You look at a team in the ACC in Florida State, a good team in the conference, and then you look at an elite team. That was a separation, and I think Miami completely made their mark. Again, I hope when they are making rankings, even though I think Miami is going to be a shoo-in for the college football playoffs, I hope when people look back on this game, they didn't look back at it as a one-score game because it never was that. Carson Beck, the top Heisman candidate, in my opinion, a guy that's playing absolutely free. Miami has, again, along with Ohio State, really looked like they've been playing these games very easily. They did have a close game against Notre Dame, but they played South Florida, where people had a lot of hype on going into that game. They beat them by 40. They played Florida. That game was never a game. Play Florida State, again, always had it in their control. Miami is going to be a national championship contender for sure. And a guy, Carson Beck, who's really going to make people eat their words because he's going to lead this team very, very far. They did a great job surrounding him with weapons. And the biggest difference, like I said, Miami's defense was Swiss cheese last year, and this year they are a top defense in the country. That wraps up this episode of Sloppy Saturdays. Drop down your hot takes on week 6, what you believe your biggest takeaways are. Drop down if you believe the gap in talent for college football is closing more than it ever has. That wraps up this episode of Sloppy Saturdays, and we are out.